Canada, a diverse and vast country known for its stunning natural landscapes, multicultural society, and strong values of peace and inclusivity. Or at least, that's what I read off the tourist brochure. But something seems to be going a bit wrong with freedom-loving Canada of late. It's not just homelessness, where apparently the rate of homelessness in Canada is above that of the US and England. It's a country that recently experimented with the decriminalisation of illicit drugs. Decriminalising hard drugs in British Columbia will help reduce the stigma of substance abuse, so said The Conversation back in early 2023. But as it turns out, the public don't much like open drug use and a mounting death toll. British Columbia drops decriminalisation of drugs in public after a backlash against open drug use. The 3-year experiment didn't even make it halfway due to mounting public frustration and increased street disorder that made communities feel unsafe. Excess deaths has become an issue for Canada. This is the OECD's Data Explorer for excess mortality by week. I've just filtered for Australia, Canada, Sweden, the UK and the US. The first thing I noticed is that there is no data for Australia, when previously there was. I quickly checked the latest provisional mortality statistics on the ABS website, and they state, deaths are no longer compared to a baseline average. The ABS now releases official excess mortality estimates every 6 months. The baseline constructed from an average count is no longer necessary. Looking at their latest excess mortality report published in June this year, as expected, there is no data for 2024, which goes to explain why the OECD data portal does not provide Australian data for this year. But this video is about Canada, so I'll go into more detail about excess deaths for other countries in another video. Note, this table shows percentage change from base period average deaths. One thing that is clear, Canada is not doing so well. For example, Sweden has largely negative percentage deaths over the first few months of 2024. That means, on average, less people are dying per week compared to historical averages. The UK is averaging around 5% excess deaths per week, depending on the week, while the US is averaging a bit higher at between 5 and 10%. But the standout is definitely Canada, with average excess deaths per week in excess of 20%. That's really high. If we show the data in a graph, it's even more telling. Canada is well above the pack. I'm only showing you up to week 15 because that's all they've published. The only explanation that I can find published by a traditional media source is from Canada's CBC, equivalent to our ABC. Heat waves linked to higher mortality rates, especially in cities with more renters. Because, Canada is known for being a really hot country. Like Australia, Canada's Indigenous peoples face many problems. Life expectancy for First Nation people in BC dropped 6 years, apparently due to the pandemic and the toxic drug crisis. Healthcare for Indigenous people in Canada is failing. It's time to give us the power back. According to the government, people identifying as Indigenous represent 5% of Canada's total population, but despite them facing seemingly growing health issues and shorter life expectancies, apparently they are the fastest growing population in Canada. I'm not sure how that works, but there you go. To address this inequity, some schools are taking matters into their own hands. Earlier this year, Brent Kennedy Elementary School in Crescent Valley, a town in the south of British Columbia, decided that only Indigenous students were deserving of a pizza party. An Indigenous mother, who chose not to register her daughter as Indigenous at the school, said her daughter came home after the event and asked, "Was I not invited because I'm not brown like Grandpa?" It was also reported that 2 siblings, an Indigenous boy and a non-Indigenous girl, were both present in the room, but only the boy was given pizza due to his Indigenous status. It is said that the event created turmoil, jealousy and resentment in the local community, with children's friendship groups affected by the apparent special treatment given to Indigenous students. The superintendent of the school district, Trish Smillie, commented, "While students completed their individual surveys on the topic of Indigenous experiences at school, they ate pizza provided by their Aboriginal education teacher. The pizza was paid for through funding provided by the Ministry of Education and Childcare, earmarked for the Aboriginal Education Program." This is the same superintendent that approved the renaming of Prince Charles Secondary School a few years ago as an act of reconciliation. Apparently, according to current policy, schools can only be renamed under exceptional circumstances, for instance, when the existing school name is offensive. Apparently, the name Prince Charles was so offensive it warranted a name change. Ms. Smillie said at the time, the board felt that this was a name that reflected colonial history and was no longer serving the school community's needs. Renaming schools, pizza parties for Indigenous students only. See, that's how you solve racism and inequality, by segregating students into distinct ethnic groups. Actually, after this fiasco, the parents tried to arrange an inclusive pizza party where all children in the school would receive 2 slices of pizza for a total cost of $900, paid for by the parents. This was initially approved by the school principal, but the powers that be decided to cancel the event, with the principal replying, "After further consideration, reflection and discussions, we have determined that the party could create division and convey an endorsement of the viewpoint that the Indigenous Equity Scan Day, coupled with a pizza celebration, lacked inclusiveness." So there you go. Including all students in a pizza party creates division, while an Indigenous-only pizza party apparently somehow brings us all together in topsy-turvy Canada. But the most egregious weaponisation of human rights has recently occurred in the small township of Emo in the southernmost province of Canada, Ontario, with the CBC reporting, Ontario Human Rights Tribunal fines Emo Township for refusing Pride proclamation. The tribunal ruled Borderland Pride will be awarded $15,000, with $10,000 coming from the township itself and the other $5,000 coming from the Emo Mayor Harold McQuaker. Why? Because Borderland Pride requested Emo to declare June as Pride Month and display a rainbow flag for 1 week, but the township refused. Yes, not only can this human rights tribunal fine the town, they can fine the mayor personally. Who are Borderland Pride? According to their X profile, make emo gay again. We're the 2SLGBTQIA+ Pride folks for the Rainy River District. If you scroll down, these posts are protected. Only approved followers can see Borderland Pride's posts. See, that's how you win over people to your cause. You sue them if they refuse to participate and block them from viewing or responding to your posts. That'll make you a lot of friends. You better be inclusive, or else. And if you think the mayor can just not pay the fine, well, mayor who stood up to Pride Group has bank account garnished. Yes, they took his money straight out of his bank account. There seems to be a pattern of that occurring in Canada. Remember a couple of years ago? Trudeau vows to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts. Yes, lawfare at its best. If there's any consolation, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's very own Liberal Party have had just about enough of him, with the CBC reporting Yukon MP joins chorus of Liberals calling on Trudeau to resign. I don't see any viable path forward with the Prime Minister staying as our leader. I think the writing is on the wall. This guy's time is up, and it's about bloody time. Good riddance.